Here we go. Hello. My name's Alexander Campbell. I'm a principal dancer with the Royal Ballet, and we are here to talk about a new production called Sleepwalker, which I'm directing, which is really very exciting. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to create a new piece. Sleepwalker is a co-production with the Royal Ballet and Greenwich and Docklands International Festival. We're really excited to be working with the festival. There's a 2-day dance festival in September, the 10th and the 11th of September, and Sleepwalker is just one of 12 acts, so we've got lots of amazing different dance styles to see. It's all outdoors and in Canary Wharf as well, which is pretty cool. We're looking forward to getting down there. I'm going to be joined today by Joe Powell-Main, who is a classically trained wheelchair dancer who is in Sleepwalker, fantastic dancer, and Sophie Cotton, who has composed the music for Sleepwalker. I'm just going to let them in now. Joe, I think, is about to join us, so let's see how this goes. And I have another one, hopefully from Sophie, on the Greenwich. Here we are. Joe, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So nice to see you again. How's things?
Yeah, enjoying the sun as best we can. Trying to get a tan.
Ha, good. I was just telling the people here about Sleepwalker and also the Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, which we're looking forward to performing in September. And I'm just hoping that Sophie will join us in a second on the GDIF Instagram. But look, whilst we're waiting for Sophie to join us, we've had a few questions in already, but I thought we could just have a little bit of a chat about the piece. And I thought it might be nice for people to hear a little bit about you generally and how you got into ballet and your passion for dance. Could you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from mid Wales, literally where I live is just sheep and fields, and the nearest town is I think it's about 10 miles away. So kind of around here, there's not really much dance stuff, which isn't the best. But I started dancing when I was 4 years old, and I went to a modern dance class with my sister Holly, who is now a ballet teacher. And the teacher kind of said, I can see some potential for ballet here. Do you think that'd be something that Joe would be interested in? And kind of that's sort of where it all started. I trained there for a few years. I did Royal Ballet Junior Associate classes in Birmingham for 3 years, and that was at the Birmingham Royal Ballet Studios. And whilst I was there, I did Nutcracker and also a UK tour of Sylvia, which was fun. And then
Tell us a little bit about your experience of working in Sylvia, which you told me, which I was, I was happy to hear, but also a little bit confronted given my age.
Yes, so me and Alex were actually in that show together, except he probably won't remember me as I was a lot younger and a lot smaller. But yeah, that was quite fun. I remember I had to kind of run on and off, really. It wasn't really a dancing role. But yeah, it was fun. We kind of went to, I think it was London, obviously Birmingham, then it was Sunderland and Plymouth, I think. So
Toured around.
yes, we did go around, a lot of train journeys. But yeah, we spent most of the time basically just messing around apart from the performances. So yeah, that was quite fun for me. But yeah, apart
Good
from
stuff.
that, yeah.
Hi.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, Joe, because we
That's right.
have Sophie joining on the GDIF platform. Hi, Sophie. Hello.
Hi, Alexander. How are you doing?
Yes.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
So great to have you here. We're just Joe was giving us a little bit of background into his journey into ballet, and so whilst you're joining us, Sophie, I wonder whether, the question is, have you done much work in ballet or dance before, or are you a dancer yourself?
No, I'm not a dancer. I wish I was. My mum was a ballet dancer, so that was my sort of entrance into ballet, the world of ballet. And I've written a bit for dancers, but not specifically that much for ballet, except for our previous collaboration in lockdown, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, this is getting to sort of, I'm just such a, dance fan. So it's just amazing to actually get to, work with you guys and do this. It's really exciting.
Oh, well, we're excited with what you've already produced. I know that you're hard at work on extending the track for the piece that we'll be sharing at the festival in September. I thought a nice place to start with you both was perhaps maybe the recollection of first hearing about this idea and maybe having the conversation with some wacky person suggesting some unusual approach to dance, or even just the idea. Joe, do you want to talk us through that? Do you have anything that you remember specifically about the approach from myself and the Royal Ballet?
I think basically what happened was last year I was very, very lucky to collaborate with the Royal Ballet for the Paralympic homecoming ceremony. And kind of from then, we sort of continued conversations and continued to stay in touch and kind of see if there was any possibilities of further collaborations. And then Emma Southworth, who's the creative producer at the Royal Ballet, came to me and said that Alex was interested in exploring this idea. Was it something I was interested in? And obviously it was, and I said yes. So that's kind of how I got on board with this project.
Well, we're very glad that you said yes so quickly, because we from when we started talking about the idea, it was quite quickly we were sort of in the studio and doing stuff. It all seemed to be a bit of a whirlwind, but we had a great opportunity to share the piece at Draftworks at the Royal Opera House and the Limbury Theatre. So Sophie, I remember the conversation we had initially very well, and I remember sort of explaining this idea that I had. So if there's anything further you remember about that, or something you think might be worth saying. But the other question I had was perhaps how easy do you find it as a composer to create a new piece of music based on an idea that's maybe come from someone else or in collaboration with someone else?
It's a really good question, and I think it just varies hugely depending on what the project is. But I think for me, and I'm sure for most people, the process, although always wildly different, the starting point always has to be the same, that you have to just shut everything off and go within yourself and just work out what your response would be, and try and make it as personal as possible, because that's where you'll feel most in line with creating something truthful and creating something that's meaningful and hopefully will connect to an audience. So I suppose it can absolutely vary in terms of difficulty, but I think ultimately you have to have that same starting point where whatever you do. I'm sure you guys feel the same when you're creating dance as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure I can speak for you, Joe, that the one of the great things about the rehearsal process that we've had is that we all had the opportunity to bring our ideas into the space, and you were absolutely pivotal in making sure that we all were pulling in the same direction, wanting to create something interesting and really, really relevant to the idea. I wonder whether it would be worth explaining. I'm actually interested to hear what is Sleepwalker about, because that's come up a few times in questions that people have sent through beforehand. And I thought, rather than me tell it, I'd be interested to hear you, Joe. What is Sleepwalker about?
Okay, so my interpretation of Sleepwalker is, well, obviously it's based on the opera and also a ballet adaptation as well a while ago of Last on Nubile, but sort of how I interpret Sleepwalker is Isabel Lubach, who is a first artist recently promoted from the Royal Ballet, who I'm going to be performing the piece with. I get the sense that it's sort of her dream or nightmare, and I'm kind of a physical representation of sort of everything that she's experiencing at that point, whether it's, you know, someone supporting her, or at times I have to say, throughout the piece, I feel kind of evil. And I
Slightly
feel like that,
malevolent force.
yes, absolutely. And I feel like that's definitely something to do with the music that Sophie so fantastically created. I don't know what it is, but it makes me feel evil, and that's kind of fun and cool. So,
Well, look, Joe, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. That's you know, that's what we've been exploring, and that's what we've been, you know, aiming to portray. That I suppose even sort of that power dynamic, you know, who's in charge at any one point during the piece. Worth mentioning that we unfortunately couldn't have Kristen McNally, who's doing the choreography for the piece, with us today. Kristen, wonderful choreographer, and you know, a really sort of valued and, you know, brilliant colleague of mine, has just been amazing in the studio. I've you know, worked with her as a dancer before. But sitting next to her and talking to her about ideas, she's a really interesting and thoughtful, you know, creative, and I wish we could hear more from her today. But I think a lot of her ideas really come through in the movement that she's able to get dancers to do. Sophie, you came into some rehearsals before we shared at Draftworks. Is that something you saw or you felt was you know, something you could see in Kristen and what she was able to do with Joe and Isabel?
Absolutely. She's just endlessly inventive and creative, and a real force in the room. And it's amazing, actually. It's very inspiring. You know, it's very useful for me because it's quite hard. And I think that's something we've spoken about, Alexander, before, like that, you know, as a composer, you go off on your own and you're just working in a room on your own. And so to come in and get the energy of the room is really fantastic. And Kristen just brings that amazing energy. I mean, you all do, but, you know, obviously as you know, as the choreographer, you know, it's so helpful, you know, to have that force, you know, to create alongside. It's really, you know, invaluable.
That's great. The other thing that I'm really excited about is the piece that we created, that we shared at Draftworks a few months ago, was about 6 minutes in total. And we're actually extending that for the festival in September. And we've actually been able to add certain elements. Isn't that right, Sophie?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've yet to hear the full draft, but finished draft.
We die.
Yeah, but yeah, it's certainly from the work that I've seen that you guys did in the room since Draftworks. It's just been very interesting to see the different levels that you created, because there's quite a lot of drama in the first half, or the first section. So, and I feel like it's, you know, we talked a bit about dreams and nightmares, didn't we, initially? And I think there's a few nightmares at the beginning, and it's certainly quite unsettling all the way through, but maybe it's, I wouldn't say it ever settles into a sort of relaxed place, but certainly the things I'm seeing from what you guys have done in the room and what I've been experimenting with is something more dreamy, and, you know, it's a fascinating process for sure.
That's great. I am looking forward to hearing the draft, as I'm sure we all are. But the other thing that I'm particularly excited to hear is, you know, we're going to add elements of live recording in the music. Is that right?
Yeah, we are. A fantastic violinist friend of mine, Jessie May Smart, is gonna. We're actually due to record on Friday, and I think that's always so exciting when you get to go into studio with someone, and because they bring a whole other creative mind. She's incredibly creative and incredibly skilled player. So it just means that you get, you know, this other input rather than it being so kind of just my thoughts in my studio. I'm getting another creative energy, which is brilliant. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what her response is, and we're going to have some improvisatory moments as well, which will, you know, I don't even know what they are yet, so we'll see. Yeah.
Oh, I'm really excited to hear that as well. You know, in other projects that I've heard that you do, you have had elements of live, you know, recording in there, and I think it really elevates it. It sort of makes it even more three-dimensional. Even though it's on a track, it's I think really going to elevate the piece even further. Which I think it's really nice. This process that we've all had is that we've sort of had an idea and we've been able to take a little step, you know, with the support from the Royal Ballet, and then we've taken another step. With the added support of Greenwich and Docklands International Festival to see where this goes. Because, Joe, I hope you don't mind me saying, but when we started the process, we hadn't worked together, and I was a little, you know, uncertain of how we were going to go. There was an idea, you know, how are we going to flesh this out? And within about half an hour, I felt, oh my gosh. Yeah, we're not going to struggle to fill 5 or 6 minutes here. We're going to struggle to whittle things down. Is that how you felt? Do you feel like there's more there? You know, more to mine from this idea?
Oh, I definitely feel like there's more to come. I feel like there's so much more that can be explored. Yeah, so that I feel like that's really, really exciting. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's one of those things when you kind of work with a new person, you're not kind of sure how they're going to work. You know, are you going to gel really well? And I kind of felt that like the whole team behind Sleepwalker, we've all sort of gelled really well. And I feel as though that a lot of the ideas, you know, it's like Kristen will come up with an idea, then you'll come up with an idea, and then it's kind of like we're all on the same wavelength. But yeah, I absolutely feel that there's so much more to come, and that's for me is really, really exciting.
No, I just I can't wait to get back in the studio and keep going. Joe, have you the performances at Dancing City are going to be outdoors? Have you ever performed outdoors before?
I have once, but usually just in terms of like logistics and things like that. For me, like my previous dance wheelchair, I didn't go outside just because of, you know, there is kind of a worry about if you go outside, our tires going to pop and things like that. And obviously, I have smaller wheels on the front, so they're not always the best at handling different terrain. But luckily, Greenwich Festival have supplied a kind of more even service for us, so that's going to be great. So I think the last thing I did something sort of outside was I had to use just like an everyday chair, and I mean that was fine. But no, I would probably say this is like only my sort of second time trying something outside, so that's also going to be really exciting as well.
Yeah, I've performed a few times outside, and there's this it's kind of strange feeling where you always feel a little bit exposed when you're on stage because there's lots of eyes and lights and things on you. But having sort of you know, just feeling the air around you, and you know, the gust of wind or something goes by, I feel like you feel even more you know, exposed and alive, which is very very exciting. I think it'll work really well outside. You just touched upon a new dancing chair that you have. Would you be able to talk to us a little bit about the difference between the chair you had previously and the one you're now using in Sleepwalker? And also, am I right in saying that that was one of the first times you performed in the new chair? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So my previous dance chair, if you kind of go through my social media, you kind of see it's like red and sparkly, which in terms of lighting and things like that, sometimes the light used to hit it at weird angles until you get kind of these beams of light coming off it, which was quite cool. But I kind of had that chair made for ballroom and Latin dance and doing competitions and things like that. So my needs have changed, and in terms of what I kind of need to support, I like to describe it as a dance wheelchair. It's almost like point shoes, but amplified times 10. Um, but yeah, my previous dance wheelchair didn't really fit me properly, so um, I used to have to sort of compensate and have a bit of a crooked-ish spine to help out, you know, make sure I felt secure and things like that. But also, currently, my new dance chair has a more solid foot plate, and the one in the past had a hole in the middle. And obviously, you know, exploring things with the partner and people standing on there having that hole in the middle is not the safest. And also, you know, for a while I used to have spokes snapping in the middle of performances. So there'd be like, I'd do a turn and suddenly there's a massive bang, and I'm like, oh my gosh, has my wheelchair just broken beneath me? But no, it was spokes, but that was annoying. Like I had to go to the shop all the time, in a bike shop, and get it fixed. But touch wood, this new chair is a lot more fitted and I haven't had any problems so far. But yes, Draftworks was the first time that I performed in a new wheelchair, yes.
Right. You seem to be incredibly agile on it. The agility that it affords is quite amazing. You know, from me, and I obviously had seen you do lots of stuff previous to working with you. Even I was like, wow, you know, this is extraordinary. You know, the way you can turn, you know, and use your whole body to maneuver is I think quite extraordinary and beautiful. And the other thing that I really enjoyed, and I think, you know, I know that Sophie and I want to sort of really explore as well, is the sound that you know, the wheels created on the floor that we were using. We wanted to sort of sample it, didn't we? Because it was this really incredible and sort of physical sound, wasn't it? So you could probably explain better than I about this, but we're going to try and do that, aren't we?
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because for me it's a sort of new sound in terms of, you know, the wheels on the because, as you say, it is a very physical sound, and because of, you know, the way that Joe moves so expressively, that sound actually translates. So there's all sorts of things that we can do in terms of sampling. We didn't manage to get there for Draftworks, but we think hopefully we will, you know, for this version. Yeah, I mean, has anyone ever done that, Joe?
No, and it's quite
No.
interesting to hear you both say, you know, you're really interested in the different sounds, and things like that, because I've been in shows where it's been like, oh, well, can you see if like the wheelchair can be quietened down a bit? And I'm like, well, I think that may not be possible, because sometimes you don't know, you know, what people clean the stage with, and if it's sticky, then there's going to be a squeak, you know. And I think, unfortunately, that's kind of part and parcel of having, you know, dance with a wheelchair. Um, but yeah, I'm really interested to kind of see how it can be built in. So that's something very, very new for me, but it's exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it's a sort of ghostly sound at times, it can be a sort of ghostly muffled sound, which is kind of ideal for our purposes really for this. And so it's sort of, and you know, if that is the sound, you know, I think we work with the sounds that we have in the room. I think it's always a really exciting way to work, you know, rather than trying to mask them, you know. So, and I think certainly outside it will blend even more, I think, very likely.
That's great. And for me, you know, directing the piece and being involved in creating it, I love having, you know, this sort of layering effect of all these different things that we're putting together. You know, even just something like that, I think, can really elevate. You know, it's not particularly obvious. It's not like this is a sound that we're going to describe to the audience so that they know what's happening. It's just an added layer of our understanding of what we're putting out. And in the music, you know, Sophie and I, we spoke initially, and Joe touched upon it earlier, that the idea came around the ballet La Somnambule, which is like 150 years old. The composition, the score, was lost for years. And then you know, it has been re-recorded in the last, I think, 20, 30 years or so. And it's the same composer who did La Fille Malgade for those ballet aficionados and lovers out there. And so we did listen to some of it, and we were like, oh, how can we get this in as well? Because we want there to be a nod. Did we manage to do that?
If you listen very carefully, you might hear a little couple of seconds now and then. Yeah, I think it's sort of, it's part of the rich tapestry of
Yeah.
of the whole effect. Absolutely, yeah. But you have to listen very carefully.
I did. I was like, it was good. And that's just, I think, probably the right way to do it. And you know, that's why, you know, I'm so grateful to have people who are, you know, not only interested in the idea, but actually really, really excellent at what they're doing. Because the music, you know, the original Lesson Ambulance was quite upbeat and sort of light-hearted, which was the exact opposite of what we were going for in the piece. And Sophie managed to put the two together in a way that works. So thank you very much for doing that, Sophie. So we've had a couple of questions before, and if anyone has any questions for us now, please just send them through, and I'll have a look and pick some up. But Joe, we had been asked, how is Sleepwalker different to other ballet performances happening right now? What do you think? How do you feel?
So I think that Sleepwalker is different in the fact of, if you kind of think about traditional classical ballet, you kind of have to have an air of, you know, everything, although it's not, looks easy, and it kind of exists in more of a ethereal kind of world, especially with things like Swan Lake and things like that. But I think the difference with Sleepwalker is we're not kind of afraid to show that, you know, the work and the challenge behind each movement. I think there's a couple of moments, and even just dancing it as well, sometimes you're like, is this going to work this time? Because you have, you know, those kind of rehearsals where it's like, oh, if we just miss something, is it going to go completely pear-shaped? But I think that's sort of the beauty of it as well, because it's almost like there's that risk element. Yeah, so you're not quite sure, oh, is Joe going to catch Isabel in time, or vice versa? And so I think we're not afraid to show the work, but we also like a bit of risk, which is really cool.
Oh, well, there's definitely plenty of that. I mean, I often sit back and just, you know, I'm in awe of how you and Isabel work together. And I know you had the opportunity to work for the Paralympic GB Homecoming, but did that relationship just click straight away, or was it something you had to work on? I wasn't there for those rehearsals for the homecoming ceremony, but when I stepped into the room with you guys, it was like you've been doing this all your lives.
Yeah, so in terms of like working things out, especially for the Paralympic homecoming ceremony, I think what was quite cool is that me and Kristen kind of worked out some stuff, and then I think because Isabel was really up for trying things out, she just slotted in sort of seamlessly, and that was really, really amazing. But it's kind of quite interesting because I was actually a couple of years younger than Isabel at White Lodge, so
Okay.
we kind of knew of each other. But yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes you just work with people that, again, as I was saying earlier, that you really gel with. And I feel like Isabel is definitely like a dance partner that I really gel with. And yeah, I feel like we don't really have to, it sounds bad, but we don't have to like work really hard to, you know, make things happen. And yeah, I really enjoy dancing with her. So that's very exciting for me.
Well, it's great to see, you know, as you know, a professional dancer, there's a great level of comfort I see watching you two. There's no moment where I think, oh gosh, this is not going to work, or even though we're showing the work, and there are times where, you know, there's obviously that challenge of, you know, the power dynamic, who's in charge. You see that, but you see it so cleanly. It's really impressive, and you know, I'd love to take credit for it, you know, being at the front of the room, but it just seemed to work so well from day one. Amazing. It's nice when that happens. Do you feel like that happens, Sophie, with composers and musicians? Are there people that you sort of get in a room with and you just immediately draw inspiration from, or feel like there's a really positive working environment?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it always helps hugely, doesn't it? I think if people are up for just not being taking themselves too seriously initially, and just being up for trying things out, because whilst we all have set ideas maybe initially of what we think we want, it is that combination of having people together in the room and everyone's different ideas and everyone's willingness to try different things, I think that's so beneficial so often. So you sort of, and you need that sort of open-mindedness, I think, with people to to create something interesting. And I think just sometimes there's just a good connection, isn't there, with people? You can't put your finger on it, but you just know this is someone that I think I can work with, and I think we can be honest with what we think. Maybe that's hugely important. I think feeling that you can say, actually, I don't think this works, or I prefer it like this, or whatever. And I because again, that you have to feel that the finished article somewhere is true to who you are, don't you, somehow, in order to relate to it and feel it really connects with the audience. So yeah, absolutely. When you find someone you can work with, you gotta hold on to them.
Yeah, I certainly feel like that. I know that there's certainly even partners in my career who I've worked professionally that it's hard to even explain exactly what it is, and I think you've done a really great job of doing that. I'm listening. I'm like, wow, that's it. I might have to steal that for myself. Thank you. But it is. I think it is that honesty, that ability to be honest, and feedback to each other. And I feel like, particularly in the rehearsals that we've had for Sleepwalker, we've really had that, because everyone involved, certainly, has been open to that, and able to express, things that are working, things that aren't. Actually, I'm sure Joe would be able to say, there are a few times where we're sitting there and I'm going, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. We're nearly there, but that's not it. But we got there, and I think because we've been able to have those discussions, it's led to something really. And I sit there and I just think, wow, these guys are doing something amazing. Sophie, when we discussed this idea of creating a dreamscape, and there were certainly, is it nightmare, is it sleep, is it unsettled sleep, what is it? Did you think, there's definitely some instruments or sounds that I will lean into because it is sleep or it is nightmare, or do you have a set of instruments or a sound that you think, no, this is where I'm most comfortable, this is where I create my best work, and I'm able to fashion something from there? Or is it a bit of both?
Again, it's a really interesting question. I think it is a bit of both, I suppose. I think, I don't know, I find very often I think my initial idea is the idea very often that I just tend to, something that just comes to your mind straight away often is the most intuitive, and again, maybe the most truthful thing. And when we initially talked about it, I think this idea of a dreamscape and creating a soundscape that was sort of dreamlike was really exciting to me, actually. The idea that the possibility to layer sounds, and some sounds that you know what they are, but some sounds that you don't know what they are. And that's kind of interesting, because that's a bit like dreams, isn't it? You sort of, some things you can lock into, and some things are just there fleetingly, or remind you of something or whatever. And then the idea that we talked about of juxtaposing something that doesn't necessarily belong, which again is something that I know we've talked about a lot, Alexander, the idea that, you can just take something, which again is actually really what the dreamscape is made up of, but we have got these two very distinct sections, which is this sort of collage, and then this kind of quite strong string interlude that comes in. So yeah, the idea of, which was something that you mentioned, Alexander, the idea that we can have these juxtaposing sections, you know, the initial sort of temp tracks that you sent me and ideas was this idea. I think you called it an alarm clock, something that, you know, wakes us up in the middle of the dream, or actually takes us maybe into a nightmare in the middle of the dream. And so that's something I've sort of run with a bit. It's maybe less harsh than I initially set out to achieve, but hopefully it still has a sort of similar effect, you know.
Well, I think so. When we first put it on in the studio, everyone's listening, like, and then all of a sudden, boom!
Yeah.
Right. So I think it definitely did have that effect, and probably a good thing it wasn't even harsher. I'm not sure I would have recovered actually in time for the rehearsal. It's really, really great. You know, I love, you know, that idea that, you know, we're layering things to create the whole, and, you know, so that some things aren't necessarily obvious, but I think it does just elevate the whole thing. And that leads to a question we had before that I thought, Joe, you might like to answer, is how do the movements reflect the idea of what the ballet is about? So this idea of, you know, a sleep state, and maybe you representing sleep whilst dancing with Isabel. Are there, you know, any sort of movements that you can describe, or things that we've done in the piece that you know, reflect that idea?
Yeah, so just thinking kind of about the beginning of the piece, it kind of starts really quite sort of small and then grows. And I feel like the beginning of the piece is almost like it's kind of, if you think about when someone drifts off to sleep, like they don't just, well, some people do. I am not one of those people. But you kind of slowly sort of drift off to sleep. And I feel like the beginning is quite sort of calm and slightly sort of meditative. And then it's kind of as you get into sort of more of that dream world, particularly for some of the movements that I do, I feel as though certain dynamics change, and then that reads completely differently. And I think where things are faster and sharper, you kind of get a sense, okay, this is more of a nightmare situation rather than a nice, pleasant dream that someone's having. But yeah, and also just thinking about the end as well, sort of the first section, I sort of feel like it kind of builds, and the spirals are, it's, I like to think of it as it's almost like a physical representation of sort of Isabel's thoughts, and it's like she's trying to wake up, but at the same time I don't want her to, and so she's trying to sort of let go. But then I think, you know, going forward, she kind of does, but doesn't at the same time. So that's sort of how I view it. But I feel like the movements are quite sort of, there's like a naturalistic element to them. So it's not like, oh, everything has to be completely placed, everything has to be, you know, the traditional sort of balletic things that we see. And there's definitely a sense of classical line in there, but you know, we mix it up and it has more of like a contemporary ballet-esque feel, and that's really cool.
You said it better than I could. That's it. I think that you know, the naturalistic element of Kristen's movement, you know, in with that, you know, some quite unusual shapes and movement that she's able to create. I think is what makes it interesting, and I think lends itself really well to that uncertainty of, you know, when you're in a dream, sometimes you know you're in a dream, or if you don't. I've actually never done any sleepwalking myself in real life. Have either of you? Joe's giving the nod here.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about it, or was it just creepy for the people around you?
I don't remember anything about it. I was told by my parents, I was a lot younger at the time, and apparently I came downstairs and sat like in the living room, and they were kind of like, there was like nothing, you know, like when someone says there's sort of no light behind your eyes, there was like nothing there. And it was really weird because I think my mum said I sort of had quite a coherent conversation, but I don't remember any of it. But apparently I also have a habit of sometimes sleep talking as well, which is really weird. But yeah, I don't remember any of it. So
It's an unbelievably like weird and interesting phenomenon, and I think that's certainly when I was looking at La Somnambule, and that's what it translates to, the Sleepwalker. I was like, I feel like there's a lot in here that we could explore. And one of the questions we just had through was about where does what plans do we have for Sleepwalker beyond these shows in September, and it just feels like there's so much more to do. It feels like there's so much more to mine from this idea. But I suppose initially we want to have as many people see this pas de deux as possible, don't we? I mean, I love the fact that we're going to be able to present this at Dancing City, which is obviously a free dance festival in the middle of Canary Wharf. Amazing. The more we can do, the better, right? I hope that we'll have the chance to get out and do more and expand on it. I think it'd be really cool. Well, listen, there's so many things coming through, but I feel like we've covered some of the questions that are coming through already, and I feel like we've given a little bit of a taste of what we're trying to do and what people are likely to see when they come. The 10th and 11th of September, the performances are at Canary Wharf, part of Dancing City, the dance festival at the Greenwich International Festival. I think I'll just wrap up for now, but a huge thank you to the Royal Ballet and GDIF for allowing us to use their platforms, and a huge thank you to Sophie Cotton and Joe Powell-Main. I look forward to seeing you in the studio soon and finishing off the piece in time for the shows in September. Thanks so much, and see you all soon.
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.